Hi everyone, this is Bridget Cook-Burch with Inspired Legacy Publishing, and I could not be more pleased than to introduce you to Robby Eastman, who is a brand new author with an extraordinary story. Rob, would you tell everyone the title of your book and what it's about?
Yeah, so the title of the book is Warrior in the Garden, and there's an old Chinese proverb. It says, it's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in a war. And for me, growing up, I just lived in survival mode, dealing with bullying and not living up to the expectations of my community. So my book is really about learning the tools early, becoming that warrior in the garden, having those things necessary needed to succeed in life.
Tell me about the pain that you're wanting to address in the world that you see, that you addressed in the book.
I've been working in the mental health industry for the last 13 years. Mostly due to the fact that I needed help myself and I wanted to help my community not have to deal with the things that I went through. And one thing I've learned is there isn't a single family that isn't struggling or needing some help with something. So the things I dealt with was ADHD at a young age, always getting in trouble in school because I couldn't sit still, bullying because I didn't look like everybody else, feeling less than or like I was letting God down from shame-based religious outlook or ones that I put on myself, and really getting through to becoming my true self and not being what everybody else needed me to be. I became whatever, I was a people pleaser, and I developed that skill at a very young age, and ultimately when you get to a place of an adult and you don't even know who you are, that brings on a lot of problems.
And so your book is about how you solved so many of those.
Yes, it's an up and down battle, and the book is pretty exciting. I don't want to go too much into that, but I can promise you, you won't be bored. And it's a very raw and real experience of my life, but I think I'm very confident that a lot of you are going to identify with a lot of the book.
What do you think people are facing today where they deserve some training to be a warrior in the garden?
For the youth, knowing that they get to be whoever they want to be and stepping into the cards that God dealt them, whether they're ADHD or they have big ears or they're a redhead or whatever it is, our insecurities, learning to embrace those rather than hide from those, I think is a huge one. And then the adults who have been affected by all of these things as well, getting to a place where they let go of all those old resentments or anything else and they can step into their true self.
Beautiful. What I love about this book is that Rob fully stepped into his true self and is now sharing all the raw, the real, the gritty, and the triumphant on the other side. So what did it take from you to write this out? That was a big deal for you.
Yeah, I'd struggled in school, and me as a writer or author by Robby Eastman is gonna blow a lot of people's minds. And people had asked me for probably the last 13 years, like, have you written a book? Have you written your story? And I just heard write, and it was like, nope, not doing it. So luckily I met Bridget and we came and we got together, and it's been an amazing experience. And I hear so many people when I tell them I'm writing a book, they're like, I would really love to write my story, but I don't know how to do it. And I was like, that's the key. You know, everybody has a story, and there's so many tools that everybody needs that's probably happening in your life. And when you get the right people together, big things happen. And it was an amazing experience for me, because never in a million years did I think that I could ever get to this place of publishing a book. And being able to interact with you and Hannah was an amazing experience, and I'm really excited for this.
You know, you had to go through a lot of difficult life experiences to get where you are today. I think that's one of the reasons that you're such an extraordinary coach. And what did the actual, working on the book and having to reflect on those stories, what did it bring up inside of you?
Yeah, so I've been to rehab multiple times, and if anybody's in that world, you understand there's the steps, and you go through it and you get rid of all these things. And I thought that I had worked through all of those things, but going back and interviewing ex-wives and friends and family and being in a mature place enough to let them tell their story and understand that I have my story and what happened to me, but that's not always how everybody else sees it. So to be in a place to hear their pain and allow them to heal man, I'll tell you what, after those 7 days of recording, I was exhausted, and it's scary, especially putting all this vulnerability out into the world in fear of judgment, growing up that way, feeling judged and afraid of that, and now putting it out in black and white. I went through some stuff, and I'm just excited to be able to continue to grow, not only from writing this book, but whatever comes after that.
I love that you evolved through the process.
Yeah, I thought I was there. I thought I'd
Don't
figured
we
it all
always
out.
think
But
we've arrived
man,
and then
full exposure. I just remember sitting there one day, reading one of my own chapters and going, do I want to put this out? Like, people are gonna see this. And at the end of the day, that's the whole point. If we live behind our lies, behind our secrets, society's never gonna get better and nothing's ever gonna change. So if I take some scrutiny for my story, I can promise you for that 1 or 2 people, there's gonna be 30 people who needed to hear it. So I'm okay with the odds.
oh, that's fantastic. I would love for every author to know that about that. It's how we as humans learn. And it's beautiful to see that you do this on the stage as well. Like, I've had the opportunity to watch you transform kids' lives right in front of mine, you know, like I was like, wow, look at them. And so tell us a little bit about what you're doing with your story as you're getting it out into the world.
The big thing was when I got sober back in 2009, I started speaking in an AA, and I felt like I was on top of the world, and I got cocky, and KSL gave me a speaking gig for their leadership camp, and I went in there and I bombed it. I don't remember anything. I was supposed to speak for 40 minutes, blacked out after 12. The guy who hired me was prompting me from the back, and I remember leaving. He cut me short at like 15 minutes, and I remember walking out to my car going, you're an idiot. I'm never gonna do this again. And that's when the other side of me is like, if I want my life to be different, I've gotta face my fears and I've gotta get better. So I started videotaping myself and just really learning my story and getting past that insecurity of it. And one thing that happened to me in rehab, this guy, I was in there complaining about my life and how hard it was and all these things, and he stopped me and he said, when did this start to happen? And I thought he was talking about my divorce, and he's like, no, when did you first start hating yourself? And that's when I went back to the little 6-year-old me, when I started believing the bullies, not learning the proper coping skills. So I worked with adults in mental health before, and I just kept hearing the same story. I'm like, I feel like I need to work in prevention. So going in and sharing my story and my fears, and I'm a pretty big muscly guy covered in tattoos, and I can identify with a kindergartner who feels bad about themselves. Like, I want to plant that seed now in hopes that they water it down the road, knowing that it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, you can be whatever you want to be. So it was big for me to be able to go in and hopefully be something that they could look up to.
That's beautiful. So you work with schools, and you work with, you also do all kinds of training camps. So tell us, like, your life is incredible. Give us a breadth of what you're doing.
So I speak to K through life, church groups, schools, PTA groups, corporate events, leadership, mastermind groups, pretty much anybody that's willing to listen, because it doesn't matter if you're so successful but you have a miserable home life, or you have an amazing home life but you want to get here. I think everything revolves, one, around how you feel about the person looking back in the mirror. And if you can get that put together and you feel good about yourself and the people around you, you're gonna perform better. And it doesn't matter whether that's sports, in the home, in the workplace. I think that's the key to getting out. So, you know, I started speaking at schools, but then it's morphed into, that was one thing, you know, when I started my business as a trainer and owning a gym, it was like, I'm gonna train professional athletes and I'm gonna go to the UFC and train all these people. And one thing I found is that the athletes don't have any money. And I started training like 70-year-old women who would pay me $800 a month to pay my bills. So early on, it was like, God, I'm just gonna do whatever you ask me to do, whatever comes next. So I don't ever like pre-plan anything. I just listen, and when I'm prompted, I act.
What's wonderful too is, you know, I see that you've taken all of the tough things that have happened to you, and you can relate to any kid and also any adult who's facing struggles. And you have brought about a lot of solutions in life. In fact, you have a nonprofit as well. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so when people ask me where I went to school or anything like that, we've all heard the School of Hard Knocks. I just quietly say, hey, I got a PhD in what not to do. So all of my fails have become my best tools, and I don't need to know what to do. I've got 100 ways of not to do it, so we can find it a little easier to go this way. And so as I was doing this and working in the communities, it just didn't feel like enough. And anybody that works in the mental health industry, or your kid's struggling or you're struggling, you call up a therapist and they're like, we're a year out. It's like, we've got to do more in the community. So I started a foundation called the Eastman Family Recovery Foundation. It's a 501c3 where we assist families dealing in crisis or youth that don't have the means to get the help. And for me, with a good coach, a solid program, whether that be a soccer team, baseball team, karate, art, dance, if they can be guided to them best selves at a young age and be held accountable to do hard things, not quit after a week of joining the team, things like that, there is so much power in that. So we help with a lot of different things. So suicide prevention, going into schools and helping. We teach, I share my story. Then we go into breakout groups with the kids. Then we work with the teachers on emotional vocabulary and how to better understand the red flags rather than waiting for the kid. You've seen them struggle all week and then they have a come apart on Friday and it disrupts the class. It's like, we want to train everybody. You don't have to deal with it, but you can see the signs so that you can help them get help earlier.
Like what you were saying, you wanted to prevent more, so you're giving them skill sets to prevent crises and chaos and other things.
So when I worked with adults, it was cool, and then I worked with kids, but then after the summer was over and I came back, the unhealthy family dynamic had re-indoctrinated everybody, and so we created a group called the Village Effect, but it's like, we got to get back to allowing people who are experts in their field to help, and parents not wearing every single hat that most of them they're not good at, they're overworked, they don't have the energy, and their kids are struggling. So I just wanted to be a place where they could send their kids and know that they were getting the help they needed and the love and support, but also the accountability.
And so sometimes you do, in addition to all these other amazing things, you also do summer camps, and you've been a coach as well. Where do you see that athletics and self-esteem and some of the things you're wanting to teach kids come to play?
Fitness, my gym, everything is just a mental health tool. It's an easy place to teach people how to do hard things in a safe environment. So I always put some psychology into it. It's like, once we start our workout, you cannot have a drink. You're not gonna dehydrate in 45 minutes. But in that time, you're gonna tell yourself, you're gonna make excuses. You're gonna be like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom, or oh, I need a water when things get hard. It's like, do you suck it up and finish, or do you take the break? And so when you see those habits in the gym, you're gonna also see that that's why your life's going the way it is outside of the gym. So we learn to do the work. We have a saying, we don't quit when we're tired, we quit when we're done. And you'll see these kids that come in with asthma or all of these different things, and at the start, and we don't allow the parents to stay because the little kids are like, do I have to do it? It's like, we wanna build the relationship with the kid. So as they go, day one, day two, I can see their behaviors, but as we pump them up and we show them like, you are capable of doing this, it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing, you're stronger than you were yesterday. And by the end, they're not even thinking about water. Like 2 months into the camp, no water, they're sprinting in the heat, they're flexing in the mirror. There's some things that you can take. You can take your kid's phone, you can take their gaming system, you can get fired from your job, the bank can take your car. But when you do the hard work, nobody can take that from you. That's true confidence. That's not a parent saying, oh, you're beautiful, don't listen to, that doesn't do anything for me. But when I go in and I know I did the work and I know I prepared, nobody can take that from me. And that goes into doing the work, becoming the warrior in the garden.
Wow, and that can translate into so many different areas of life. Preparation, accountability, stick-to-itiveness, all of those things.
Yeah, I just think there's not many things, and we have to live in this vessel for the rest of our lives. Like, there's no magic yet. So to be able to hold yourself accountable and feel achieved at the end of that, see some changes, I think it's the most underused and underrated mental health tool on the planet.
I think you're right. I think you're right. So given all of the scope of this, tell the reader, or give the reader your deepest invitation. Like, from your story, from yourself, what would you want the world to know that they might not know at this minute?
Man, I think there's so many. We either come from a religious background or a military background, or parents aren't around. Like, we all have our thing. Nobody gets away with anything, not unscathed, whether you're rich and you weren't taught how to get rich, or it doesn't matter. Everybody has something. And I challenge you to, after reading my book, seeing all of these things, whether my experience was the same as yours, or you can associate something that happened to you with what happened to me, like, dig into your story. I had a psychology professor tell me, he's like, "Are you gonna get a degree?" And I was like, "No, I'm just studying psychology because I wanna know why I'm so messed up." And he told me to write down my story, to study myself, and through that, I would find everything I needed. And in that experience, it hasn't stopped. I've self-studied psychology for the last 13 years. I challenge you to step out of that victim mindset, because nobody's coming to save us. You may have been the victim. I'm not saying that, but as long as you stay there, nothing's gonna change. So I always try and take that extreme ownership, find what part I played in it, and a lot of the times I take it even if it's not mine to take, because that way I can start moving forward. And I just challenge everybody, whatever it is, doesn't even matter. To me, it's all the same. You are worth it. You are good enough. And today, one thing we don't get back is time. So today's a perfect time to start looking in the mirror and learning how to love that person.